course, for the areas that are directly affected, they're devastating impacts. We're probably talking, in terms of the direct impact, somewhere between 10 to 20 to 30 billion dollars. And then if you take the multiple of that, we're probably talking, we're maybe in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 billion dollars. So for the overall U.S. economy, it won't really show up. It's probably going to whack off about a quarter, one quarter of a percent GDP growth, and that's we're at about 2% growth. So not on the national level, but on the areas that are affected. Now that of course is primarily South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. Those states, very significant impacts in the of course those that take a direct hit, but also spillover. In other words, businesses that provide supplies to the companies that are in the flooded areas, quite significant. The farmers that are directly affected, of course, are seeing some very significant impacts. But of course, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has indicated that there will be flood insurance provided for those that are directly affected. But those who are indirectly affected, that would be the suppliers of agricultural, for example, fertilizer and other seeds and so on. They're not going to be getting any money from the federal government, so it has some very significant impacts for them. And even for those farmers that are compensated via flood insurance, it's going to take a while to get those payments. The payments will not adequately compensate them. In other words, there will still be net losses. And of course, what does it do to the land fertility, the land productivity in future years? Because obviously some of these areas that are hit by the floods are going to have some actual land damage to the point where they'll not be able to plant next year, perhaps even the year beyond that. So we don't know at this point in time, but what we do know though is the impacts are very significant. We haven't seen floods even like this, some would say since 1993, but actually the impacts of the current floods are going to go well beyond what happened in 1993. And in terms of this part of the country, we're in unfortunately record-making territory in terms of the economic impacts. Now we'll have to wait and see what happens with, of course, precipitation, and what happens, what does the Corps of Engineers do upstream in terms of letting water go from, say, Gavin's Point Dam.
With the slow recovery of the economy, would it be fair to say it couldn't have happened at a worse time?
It is a tough time. Obviously there is no good time for floods such as this. However, with the economy rebounding, well, rebound's perhaps a little strong term, but for this part of the country, we had been seeing very strong farm income, and this is going to whack away at farm income to some degree. And of course, it is a tough time. We're talking about crops in the field, if you will, and we were running up against corn prices about double what they were this time last year. So it is a tough time to have this sort of problem. But again, there is no good time, but it is a tough time right now. Well, I think we often look at the direct impacts, and that's in the zone that's been flooded. But even well beyond the boundaries of the flood, you've got suppliers that provide products and services either to the farm, to the businesses, to the consumers in the area. And of course, with this flood, they're going to be buying less. And even if they're buying the same, the supply chain disruptions are quite significant. In other words, the ability to get supplies in. So that really spills over and multiplies significantly. And of course, you've got the other issue, which is tourism. I mean, individuals who are seeing this nationwide, are they really going to be traveling up the interstates, in this case of I-29 particularly, Interstate 29, and going to say the College World Series in Omaha? It certainly has some impacts as individuals try to route, get a route to either their tourist destination, to the College World Series, to South Dakota, wherever. those will have some real significant impacts, and that's tacked on top of the fact that we're looking at gasoline prices up by $1 to $1.50 over what it was this time last year. So it's really having some impacts on the tourism industry, and we'll have to wait and see what happens and which ones are most affected.